Here we are. So now let's open a bottle of wine. Now the first thing to do is your equipment, your mise en place. So we start with the glasses. Make sure that you have the glasses first. Place them on the table in the right position where you need them. And now we'll proceed with the wine. We have white wine here in the bucket, and this is the way we like to present it to the guests. In the bucket, in the ice, so they will be nice and cold. Presenting something on ice, it makes the impression that the wine, even if it isn't, it will be very cold. So when you lift the bottle and you will show it, you'll see that the water drips down, the little bit of condensation start to form around the bottle is still wet. It really shows that it's cold, just like those nice commercials of beer, always iced cold. Perhaps we may want to wipe it down so that it will be nice and clean in front of the guest, and we'll be showing to our guests, perhaps the hosts. Now, when we present the bottle, we show the label in front of them, and we announce the vintage 2002 Naya. The guests will definitely nod, will approve, because this is the wine they have ordered, and if it isn't, that will be the perfect time to go and correct it. And at this point, we'll proceed on opening the wine. We can either open the bottle on the table or on the bucket, either way, as long as we're on top of a steady surface. There may end up being always possibility of slippage, or the bottle escaped from our hand, and we don't want it to fall on the floor. So by being on top of the table, worst thing that can happen is fall on the tabletop. At this point, we're going to be opening the bottle of wine, and we need to start by the capsule. To open the capsule, we'll take our trusted corkscrew, and we'll start with the appropriate blade. We place our blade 45-degree angle under the second ridge of the neck of the bottle. We'll apply a little bit of pressure towards it, and we will twist 360 degrees, so 180 by the front, and then switching from the back side, we will go up until the other side. If we apply a little bit of pressure upwards, 45-degree angle, the ridge will work almost like the train track. So we'll be able to make a nice, clean, horizontal cut around it, as opposed to sliding up and down and make those zigzag that look like teeth marks. In that case, the bottle will not have a nice cut to it. Now, this is a nice ceremony that we do for the guests. When the guests are purchasing a bottle of wine, they don't only purchase the product that comes in it, but they like to have this ceremony of opening the bottle of wine for them at the table for them. So if in case we find that the table is a little crowded, most likely the guests will kind of indicate. But otherwise, they love to have the bottle open for them because it's what they like to see. They always have the curiosity, and they like to see the way we so elegantly pull up the cork and make it a nice presentation, entertaining for the guest. Now at this point, we have loosened the capsule. We apply a little bit of slit vertically so that we can pry the capsule by placing the blade inside, and we lift the blade up, and in this way it makes a nice clean cut around it. The capsule goes into my pocket because it's garbage and doesn't go back on the table. To pull up the cork, we want to make sure that the spiral goes inside the cork vertically. So we're going to look at the point of our spiral. We can place it right into the center, and when we hold the bottle, remember to hold it by the body, not by the neck. Often we have a person that tries to calibrate and point the right position, and in this case placing their finger onto the neck of the bottle where the liquid eventually going to pass through. And the guests don't have a very good feeling of it, because I may have just cleared someone else's table, and now I'm going to put my finger onto the vessel where the liquid that they will be drinking is. It doesn't have very sanitary connotation. So always hold it by the neck, because the bottle only need to be steady. Place your cork right on the top, and apply a little bit of pressure downwards as you spin. This way your cork doesn't only spin and just spin in position, but also drive through inside the cork. So I'm going to place it right here, apply a little pressure, and twist. As you can see, about half a twist, the corkscrew is already standing up by itself. So at this point, I only need to twist it. I don't even have to apply any more pressure. And I twist about approximately 4 twists so that I can leave about 1 spin off from the bottle. If I were to apply pressure, pull up only one side, as you can see, my worm tend to go towards your right. So I want to counterbalance this rightward motion with a leftward motion. I'm going to use my left hand with my thumb up here. Basically, I play word thumb between the two, and then pull up with my hand. So let me go back to the right position as before. Play myself in position, and now I pull up. So if this tends to go too much towards, I have more pressure on my left thumb, and I'll pull up almost as much as I can. At this point, I don't even need to go all the way up, because maybe the cork is short enough that I can lift it up properly, but I want to avoid to make that pop. The pop that perhaps will be good for a celebratory champagne event, but not with still wine. So what I can do is place my napkin around the cork, and just like for a bottle of champagne, I'm going to twist it. I want to refrain from jerking it this way, because the bottom of the cork most likely is going to be moist and very fragile, and I'll be breaking it apart. With a napkin, I don't have to touch directly the bottle. Here we go. Now the cork is already in my hand. With my napkin, I can unscrew it. My corkscrew goes back into my pocket. And now I can present the cork to the guest. Now these corks are not that relevant as they were in the past. Many of these corks are made of synthetic material or plastic, so they don't say much anymore about cork smell, etc. So I'm going to place it at the table at the right side of the guest. If I had a fine dining, I probably want to have a nice proper coasters, but being that we're a little bit more casual, we just place it on the tabletop. Always remember to keep the wet, moist part where the wine traces are facing up, so you don't leave any marking on the tabletop. And leave it there with nonchalance, continue to the procedure. So don't stop and wait for that approval. Where we need to get the approval is upon the guest taste of the wine. So at this point, I'm going to lift my bottle, showing the label. I may need to wipe it down one more time. And showing the label, I'm going to pour about a ½ ounce to an ounce maximum for the guest, for the host who's going to be the taster. I'm going to show the label, bend the bottle a little bit, and at the end I'm going to pull up steadily, directly. I'm going to wipe the bottle so that it will be nice and clean, don't leave any spots on the table. This is a moment that the guests will taste the wine and will get to choose to say yes or no, approve on the bottle. So this may be a uncomfortable moment for the guests who may not be too sure about what the procedure is or how to choose the wine. So I always like to take 1 or 2 steps back, so give the guests a little bit more privacy, that they may be able to speak with their companion. That way they can feel more comfortable about choosing and giving an answer. That's also a very good moment for me to look at my other table and check what will be my next step at this point. Most likely the guests will nod, will say yes, or will approve. In that case, I will proceed on pouring the wine for the rest of the guests. I'll always start with the ladies first, and what I'll do is, again, show the label to the guest, and walk around to the right side of the guest. I'm going to pour then some wine. How much wine should I pour? It really depends on how many guests we have. On a table of 2, we'll have plenty of wine, so you can pour much more than you would pour on a table of 6 or 8, because in that case, you need to make sure that you have enough for every companion. So on a table of 2, I will probably pour about 3 ounces on a glass, which normally comes up to about the level of the widest rim of the glass. Often guests choose to have wine by the glass because it's very convenient. It's very uncompromising. If in case the guests don't like one glass, they choose another type of wine for the second glass and so forth. But if otherwise they like to order a whole bottle, they have much wider choice of product, probably better selection, as well as they have the whole bottle, which not only is the product in it, but it's the vessel, the ceremony, the control they have with the bottle. It's almost like their trophy on the table that they are enjoying slowly by slowly, and it's a much more full experience that they're having. So selling a bottle of wine not only is convenient for us, but it's so much more of a service to the guest, which we'll be enjoying. Thank you.
Hello, Aubrey. Hello. To the guest on the table. And then you present the bottle. And when you present, you announce the producer, the name of the wine, and the vintage. Sir, this is the Gigondas Chateau de Montmirail 2003. You wait for the approval, look at the person's eye, and then you proceed with the opening. Now, it's a very simple procedure. The best vehicle to open the wine is actually a guéridon. But if you do have a space at the table, you want to open at the table. Now, the label after the guest approves the wine should be facing the guest at all time throughout the wine service. What you want to do is you get your corkscrew, and you get the blade, and you're going to cut on just below the second lip on the wine. So, voila. Now you're removing the foil, and you want to do a clean cut. Make sure it looks neat and elegant. You can use a side plate for your trash, or you can put on your pocket. It is acceptable. After that, you wipe the bottle, and you are going to proceed with the worm. You're going to insert on a 45-degree angle right in the center, and come to a vertical, and insert the worm about 3/4 of the way, being careful not to perforate the cork. After that, you bring your lever to the tip of the bottle, and you hold the bottle, and you're going to pull your cork about 3/4 of the way. After that, you want to use your fingers and avoid to pop and making any noise whatsoever. So in this case, a very gentle one. You remove the worm, the cork from the worm. You see that there was no perforation of the cork, very important. At this point, it's time to present the cork to the guest, which can be either on a tray or another side plate from the right of the guest. You pour from the right of your right hand, always being very alert to your posture, and you're smiling, you're confident about your product. You pour about ½ ounce. Twist, wait for the last drop to fall, and remove. You're gonna take a step back so you're not in the face of the guest, and you're going to smile and show your product again and wait for the approval. Monsieur or Madame has approved the wine, and it's now time for us to proceed with the pouring. You're going to pour the ladies first. The first lady, starting with the first lady from the left of the guest. You will want to also be aware of pouring the older lady first and younger ladies, older gentlemen and younger gentlemen, and finishing the pour with the guest or whoever ordered the wine, which will be about 3 to 4 ounces. Notice that the label is facing the guest at all times. After that, you just have to place the bottle on the table with the label facing the guest again. So at this point, you remove the cork because that is considered trash, technically speaking, and you are finished with your wine service. Now you can remove your guéridon from the guest side. Your red wine service.
So what I'm going to demonstrate is how to, the proper procedure how to open up a bottle of sparkling wine. One of the things that you should know is this is one of the most difficult aspects of the mechanics of table service. Unfortunately, for improper procedure, this can be a weapon because of the pressure and because of the strength that a bottle of sparkling has. If this is not handled properly, this can actually, the cork can actually really fly into the air. It can hit your face, your eye, and so on. And it's actually statistic that people say that usually about 50 people every year they lose an eyesight. So we have to be very, very careful. As far as the mise en place you need to properly open a bottle of sparkling are three. You obviously have to have your wine, you have to have the proper glasses, and you have to have a wine bucket where we normally fill it with ice with a little bit of water. The reason why we put water into the bucket is because the bottle needs to actually land properly right in the center instead of pretty much, going halfway into the bucket. As far as glassware, we always try to put the glassware in front of the water glass. Because eventually, once you're going to start pouring the wine, you want to make sure that you have an easy access instead of going behind the water glass, which will be a little harder for you to reach. Presenting a bottle of sparkling, a bottle of wine in general, you have to think about three things. The vintage of the wine, the producer of the wine, and the type of wine. There is an exercise that I usually recite in my head, and it's usually the type of car that I drive. And usually those three types of information help you to really identify the bottle of wine to a guest. And remember, it's a verbal contract, so you want to make sure that all the information is delivered to the guest. So what I have right here, it is a non-vintage Valdo Prosecco. So you're mentioning the vintage, obviously this is the NV, a non-vintage, the producer, and then obviously the type of wine, which is Prosecco. A 2003 Acura 3.2. So after you present the bottle to the guest, and we always try to do it with a nice white background, you wait for the verbal contract where the guest will approve the wine. Always have a serviette, obviously, which normally goes into your left hand. If you're right-handed, you need to make sure that you have the bottle into the right hand to hold it properly for the strong hand that you have. The first thing that you will do is to always keep the bottle at 45-degree angle. Most of the sparkling wines, what they do, they have a little rag tag that allows you to simply tear the foil away. So at 45-degree angle, you just simply turn this and you just simply remove that. Remember, all the garbage, anything foil always goes into your pocket. At this point, what you should do with the serviette, you should open it and you should cover the bottle. The reason why we cover the bottle is in case, as you're removing the cage from the bottle, the cork will fly, you can still catch it. Obviously, it will not go into a window or into any other tables, but you can still have the ability to catch it. At this point, what you do, you should check underneath and you should look for the cage. I'm going to demonstrate it with the napkin folded on the opposite way. So you look for this little cage right here, and then in your head you always count 6 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At this point, what you do, you loosen up the cage. Right now it's nice and loose. Remember, the bottle always stays constantly closed. You will never remove the cage from the bottle. Reason being is because some of the sparkling wine can be under pressure, and sometimes if they're not cold enough, the cork can literally fly out in the dining room. How do we open up a bottle of sparkling right now? What do? A lot of people, what they do, they just simply hold the thumb on top and they press it. That's something that you should never do. You should think about your strong hand, which stays on the neck of the bottle, and you need to create 2 forces, 2 different forces. So what do, you hold with your left hand the bottom of the bottle, with your right hand the neck of the bottle, and you do 1 turn. Normally for the first turn, nothing really happens. If nothing really happens, then you're going to try to do a little firmer. Second turn. I feel right now that this cork really wants to come out. So as I keep turning, I hold as much as possible my right hand. I feel that it's about 3/4 away. One of the things that you want to make sure that you will never make a loud noise in the dining room for obvious reason. You don't want to disturb the guest. You don't really want to lose the effervescence of the wine by creating a big pop. So you just simply keep turning and turning. As the cork is basically almost out, you try to basically wiggle a little and turn it towards yourself. The only noise that you wanted to hear is something that sounds like this. Have you heard anything? That's exactly the noise that you wanted to do. At this point, you always keep the bottle at 45-degree angle for a few seconds, and you're gonna see that there's some sort of smoke coming out of the bottle. If you remove the cork and automatically bring the bottle vertical, there's gonna be a chance of spilling. At this point, what you're going to do, you're going to make sure that the guest will receive the cork. And quite frankly, out of this whole demo, I feel that this is one of the most difficult things. You give the cork to the guest. At this point, this serviette needs to be folded back. And that's when you're probably gonna have to kill some times, and it's gonna go back into your left arm. There are 3 ways to hold and pour a bottle of wine. You always pour over the right side with your right hand because obviously your glassware is located on the right side. You will never pour a bottle of wine by its neck. So this is one way, always making sure that the guests will see the label. This is the second way. And this is a third way, which I don't really recommend, where you keep your thumb on the bottom and then just a wrist action, which is just something that perhaps we should not really consider. So you go over the right side with your right hand and you just simply give a little pour to taste. You pour, stop, turn, and wipe. You wait until the guest will approve the wine. At the same time, you're going to put the bottle back on a white background just to display to the rest of the guests. You wait until the guest will give you the okay and taste the wine. At this point, you take the cork, you remove it, put it into a pocket, unless the guest asks you, obviously, to take it, and you keep refilling everybody else. And then at the end, you always finish with the hose. The bottle needs to be put back into the wine bucket with the napkin. And what we want to try to achieve is to keep always the bucket away from the table, to easy access for the server to serve food, to maintain the tables, and so on. So normally the bucket usually will stay close by the table, but you have to keep it in mind. It's a responsibility. One of the 3 hours of table maintenance is to refill.
Good evening, Eugene. As I said, tonight we have Mr. Brown, and he's gonna be our VIP guest. In that case, gently make sure that you have a napkin underneath. Gently read Louis Martini. It's excellent Cabernet Sauvignon, and vintage is 202. In that case, first thing that you're gonna do, you're gonna position bottle of wine in the middle of your garden. Let sediment settle down. Usually takes 10 to 15 minutes in order to do that. We're gonna speed up a little bit things because of our production here. And then what you're gonna do, you will make one long cut from the bottom all the way to the end of the foil here. Try to do that in one motion. You ready? Starting from here, all the way here inside, and then very simply removing that in one motion. Put that inside your pocket or your apron, and then we will open our bottle of wine. Key to successfully open bottle of wine is long warm. Basically takes about going in the center and then go inside. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Put the flip on the side and then one motion. Okay, make sure that your flip does not go away. One motion. Simply removing cork. There we go. In that case, you're gonna look for the nice B&B dish, put on the right hand side and position in front of your guest. In that case, they can observe their cork. Now we're gonna prepare ourselves for the second step, candle. Purpose of candle is to basically observe sediment flowing to the neck of the bottle. Every single time when you do that, you like to have your label positioned toward guest. First, you're gonna inspect your decanter, and there are 2 ways how to call decanter. Hold them on the left hand by the neck, or the second one, hold them here. I do not prefer this because you're gonna have a fingerprints in that case. Position candle in the middle. It's very delicate because it's a small neck and you have a just bump here, in that case, we're gonna try to put neck of the bottle completely inside. Okay, let's position that. Always contact with the guest. Okay, in that case, you have your host here. You position yourself that you are comfortable. What I'm gonna do here, I will go and simply position my bottle of wine like this here. And then I'm gonna look through the neck of the bottle. Here we go, together. Come join me. Okay, lower down a little bit. Very nice, just gently. And you look through the neck. Still going. Nice flow going through. I do not see sediment yet. I would stop here. What you're gonna do here, you're gonna wipe your decanter, make sure that it's done, and you're gonna let your wine sit down for next few minutes. Okay? I will let stay for a few minutes. First thing that you're gonna do, you will get your saucer, and then you're gonna present the bottle of wine in front of the guest. Okay? On that note, you're gonna remove the cork. You can put it on the side, and then get me another serviette from here. You will come to the right hand side and you're gonna pour initial taste. What we're gonna do here, I will do it first and then I let you practice. Okay? Excuse me, sir. First, what you're gonna have your right leg to the front. Guest is sitting here, but you do not move. A little bit to the right hand side. And then you will wipe it. Wait for the guest approval. And then you will go around the table, ladies first, and pour the wine to the rest of the table. Then on the end, once when you pour to the guests, then we'll go back to the host and replenish their glass probably about 1.5 hours. Would you be so kind? And you try how to pour initial taste? Give me a second, excuse me. Okay. Go ahead, give you a serviette. Very good. You do it. A little bit closer to the guest. Very good. That's fine, thank you.
Okay, so I saw earlier you broke a cork. The best thing to do is first get away from the table with a broken cork. And then what you want to do is you want to find a spot on the cork where you can get into the cork kind of sideways instead of pushing straight down. Because if you push straight down with a corkscrew, you're just going to knock the cork all the way into the bottle. You have a whole different kind of problem that we might deal with later. But so what we're going to do now is look for a part of the cork where you can get in with the corkscrew and push in kind of sideways and hook the cork. And now just turn it very gently until you're sure that you have a nice, strong grip on the cork. Rather than pushing in and down the corkscrew, I'm twisting around. So I want to use torsion rather than pressure. So as I'm twisting, I'm starting to feel, see how the corkscrew is in there nice and tight? A couple more turns before I try to pull the cork out. I just want to make sure we have a nice, firm grip on it. Okay, so now I'm pretty sure that I have a good grip on it. I'm going to use whatever part of the corkscrew will let me pull up on the cork. And you see now, with this Bordeaux style lever, we can get the cork out without any pieces of cork going into the wine. And then, like I said, no matter how proud you are of yourself, when you got the cork out of the bottle, don't present it to the guest. So there you go. Now you can bring it back to the table and serve it to the guest the way you would normally. Okay, David, now we're in trouble because we can't get the cork out now because it's too far down. And it's happened because someone pushed on the cork instead of just twisting. what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to push the cork all the way in and then try to get it out. So I'm gonna push the cork in and get it down into the wine. Now I take a string, piece of butcher's twine, clean butcher's twine from the kitchen, and tie a nice big knot in the bottom of it. And we're gonna take that knot, take the drinking straw, push the knot down beneath the level of the cork. Once you get the knot down there, pull up on the string, and as you can see, it's pulling the cork up and out of the bottle. I have to be careful because there's some wine on top too. I don't want to spray it all over myself. And as I'm pulling on the string, it's pulling the cork up, up, and eventually get to the top. And out you go. Oh, now if that happens, maybe the cork is firm enough that we can actually get it out with the corkscrew. So again, I'm going in sideways and twisting until again I have a firm grip on the cork. And now use the corkscrew to get it out. There you go. So what we're going to do is put the corkscrew through a napkin and into the cork, and then pull the cork out, keeping everybody safe by having the cork covered. So now the corkscrew goes right through the napkin. And you need to lift up a little bit so that you have some give, some play. And now I'm going to pull very carefully because eventually it's going to push the cork out with pressure. Okay, I can feel it's coming out now. It's going to wiggle it a little bit. It's going to force itself out with pressure. And the cork's out. There you have it. Wine is such a complex subject that if you start really getting into the finer details while you're at the table trying to sell wine to the guests, you'll never get away from the table. If you start talking about terroir and climate and the grapes and the clones and the it's behind a mountain so it stops the rain from coming over. These things are such fine details that are all important eventually. But at a table, when the waiter only has 50 seconds to sell a glass or a bottle of wine, maybe even an expensive bottle of wine, but they have 6 tables to get to. You can't spend all day going over all the minutiae of why a wine's going to go or a wine is not going to go. You can pretty much predict what a wine's going to taste like because of where it's from. And it is a simple system that I've come up with to give waiters just 4 basic sets of flavor profiles to plan on being able to use at the table. If you start with a map of the world and you draw a big box and have eventually 4 quadrants with from north to south, you have colder to warmer, so lighter bodied wines to fuller bodied wines. And then from the old world to the new world, where in the old world you're going to tend to have more dry wines and the new world wines with more fruit. Now you have light bodied wines in the top 2, more full bodied wines in the bottom 2, drier wines in the old world, and more fruity wines in the new world. So if you go to the north, where you have it colder, the grapes get less ripe. Because they get less ripe, there's going to be less sugar. With less sugar, at the end of the fermentation, when the yeast is done, there's going to be less alcohol. Alcohol is one of the ingredients in wine that drives the weight, the body of the wine. And if you're talking about how the flounder is going to go with this wine, customer says, I'm having the flounder. Well, I ask them, are you having the ceviche or are you having the fried flounder with tartar sauce? The wine that goes with ceviche is going to be a very light wine. It's a very delicate, light dish, and therefore should come from a more northern area, from a colder place. The wine that goes with the fried fish with tartar sauce is going to have to be much fuller to compete with all that fat. So the richer dish gets a richer wine from a more southerly region with more alcohol and more body. One way of describing how the body of the wine shows itself when you're drinking wine is the way it feels in your mouth. So a light-bodied wine would be perhaps skim milk or water. A full-bodied wine would be whole milk or half and half or cream. So the body of the wine is the way it feels in your mouth, the viscosity, the weight. And you can think about food dishes kind of the same way, because the marinated fish, the ceviche, is a very light, very delicate dish. The fried fish, full of fat with a mayonnaise-based sauce, is going to be actually quite full-bodied and needs a wine that has that similar body to go with it. So that's kind of how the body thing works. And you can determine what the body of the wine is going to be by where it is on the map. So let's say the dish is a seared sea scallops with a mango and cucumber salsa with just a little bit of lime juice, maybe some shallots, and maybe a little bit of hot pepper. No olive oil or fat added. So this dish is essentially a light-bodied dish because there's no fat. So you want a light-bodied dish, you have a light-bodied dish, you want a light-bodied wine, that automatically kind of shoves you up towards the upper quadrants. You want something light and bodied, wine-wise, to go with a light-bodied food. But you also have a dish that has some sweetness. Scallops are sweet on their own. The mango is sweet. You have some sweetness, and this is another little basic rule of food and wine matching, is that the wine has to be at least as sweet as the food. If it isn't, you have orange juice after brushing your teeth, which is obviously shocking, or a glass of champagne with birthday cake. Not as good as people think it's going to be. So you have the mango and the salsa, but light-bodied. So for light-bodied, we're going north, and then for sweetness, for fruit, for apparent sweetness, you go to the New World. So we're talking about maybe an Oregon Pinot Gris instead of a Napa Valley Chardonnay. Now let's take those same scallops and we saute them or fry them, and we serve them with a citrus beurre blanc. So an orange butter sauce or some sort of thing with the sauteed scallops. You have the sweetness and the richness. Now we're talking about maybe a Chardonnay or a Fumé Blanc from California, because that has more alcohol, more weight, still is fruity because it's New World. Come back over to the other side of the map, you're gonna have braised lamb shanks with sun-dried tomatoes and rosemary. And the guest, this is where it comes back to the guest. The guest says, I really prefer dry red wine. What do you think? Well, braised lamb shanks are gonna have a fair amount of fat, so a fair amount of body. And if you want something dry, as the guest asked for, with something more full-bodied, come back to the Old World, go down south, and we get either a Nero d'Avola from Sicily, which is right across from Africa, it's hot there, or you have a Aglianico del Vulture from Campania, or a Salice Salentino from the center of southern Italy, right underneath the heel of the boot. So these wines are going to be full-bodied and dry because they're from that lower left quadrant. So you want dry and light-bodied up to the upper right. You want dry, you want fruity and light-bodied, go to the upper left. You want full-bodied and fruity, go down to the lower right, lower left. And then you want dry and full-bodied, go to the lower right. And that is the way a waiter can quickly assess what the food profile is, flavor profile is, what the body of the food is. They know if it's a ribeye, it's going to be very heavy in fat and very rich. We're talking something from a more southerly, hotter region with more body. If it's filet mignon, there's less fat in filet mignon, it should be a lighter bodied wine. Go for the north. If you have a dish from a specific region and you don't know what they make there, you don't think they make wine, you don't think they make beer, you don't know what kind of alcoholic beverage they produce, get yourself your globe or your kid's globe or your old globe and put your finger on that region where the food comes from and spin the globe and see what wine regions go past your finger. And if no wine regions go past your finger, maybe you don't want to serve wine. Because if all you see is rum, rum, beer, rum, rum, beer, rum, rum, beer, serve a beer with your Jamaican jerk chicken. They don't make wine down there. They make beer and they make rum. So that's how that would work.